Are you recording this bit?
I am.
Okay, brilliant.
So, Kamal, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Anytime, as you know, it's my pleasure. I have always valued your very unique
Thank you.
point of view
Thank
in
you.
various different...
I take pride in that.
You should. And so where should we start? This is our third session officially.
Yeah. I think you asked me, what would be an interesting topic to talk about, because we share many conversations and we talk about all kinds of wild things. And
Yes.
I'm always like, let's talk about aliens. On this occasion, I've decided I think we should talk about money because interesting things are happening currently, namely things like crypto and just what's happening with economics in general. So I thought money would be a good topic to talk about. And I think maybe we should begin with, like I say, crypto and what's happening currently, and talk about, or maybe we start with what is money and what we use it for and the direction that it looks like it might be going in with these new technologies.
So what do you think about it? How are we looking at where would this technology lead us? Do you have any intuitions about it? Is it better, you're worse off, or is it pretty open-ended?
So, I mean, currently or previously, money was something mostly physical, and you could hold it, you could store it, you could save it, and you could put it into the bank, and then it'd become somewhat kind of data, informational. And then the digital revolution, obviously, now it's mostly kind of held in digital numbers. But yeah, it was something that you could hold on to, and we could trade it with each other. And like I say, yeah, it was physical, and now it's moving into a space where it'll no longer be physical, it looks like. And I wonder, does this pose any sort of problems,
So you're worried about it?
I guess so. That's how it appears, right? Because obviously, us growing up, we've always known, like I say, money to be this physical thing, and now it's moving into this.
So, as you can imagine with our conversation before, that I'm passionate about future civilization, our future civilization, and how you can arrange different types of it. And I've realized that that's actually one of the reasons why I am so interested in ancient civilizations, because how are you going to learn about a future potential arrangement if you don't know how humans lived in ancient civilizations? So you study, you understand, and you see what they have done, how much you can, and then kind of figure it out. Like, okay, what could be the direction? Because no one can figure it out, like what actual way of, arranging civilization is. So part of my research fits into this four-point model, which many people are working towards. Okay, so the first one, I'm quickly going to go 4, and then we'll come back to the point. So let's unpack this element of digital revolution and money and the currency. What is it, something we have to be really worried about? We should be. I mean, of course, this is something which connects us at a very basic economic resource level and create transactions and partnerships. So definitely, I find that topic really valuable. So the first one is closed loop economy, where you're recycling everything which you're doing and you're working within the closed loop economy, steady state population, and you are within the carrying capacity of humans, and in that you're building new things, new, interesting, innovative, not only physical technologies but social technology. So that's a good way to start. And in that, you want everything which you can do virtual should be virtual, because virtual means less resources heavy approach. Now, you can never go full virtual because everything which you are doing virtual is always at some percentage dependent on physical elements of it. So that's where the closed circle economy comes in. So the next point is geographic, hybrid, online, and physical communities. And that's, we have to figure it out. Like either we are geographical right now or really online. And both of them have its own limitation and how we have to, I mean, we are talking about, of course, the conventionally, if the society works, it's perfect. You stay however physical you are. But let's say if we are trying to understand this digital revolution in that context, the third element is the element of how can you be more intuitive and wise as a human being, where you can see the wicked problems and also maybe a bit more wiser towards, transcending to your limited capacity. In that, framework of, let's say, like, how do we counter all so many different things which are happening? In that, I think that's where you are raising the question. Okay, so we are going virtual and we are actually going to make maybe our currencies virtual. Is it good or not? I think at this point, it looks like that we should have virtual. You know how it looks like we should have automation. But the point is that it's so easy with these powers, godlike powers, for single individuals to either manipulate them or actually have further disparities between the peoples and various different societies. And that's why I think it's very important. Of course, we want more algorithms who can perform better intelligent tasks. But are they already not hacking our child's minds and selling them the video game, which they don't even have the capacity to understand? That's, well, if you want to say what is evil, that's pretty evil. So that's maybe where maybe we should draw a line here that a market shouldn't be allowed to do that.
It's funny that you mention evil on the topic of money. I guess we'll build up to that. But essentially, what you're saying is, because we're living in this digital revolution where there are these virtual worlds and we live virtually, that maybe our currency should be virtual as well to work alongside that. That makes sense. I guess you talking about hackers and your worry about it being manipulated, I guess that is a real threat. I think I was thinking about it slightly differently in that it's becoming non-tangible. But I guess like you're saying, that is maybe falls under a similar threat in that it could be switched off at any moment. Not that anyone would, but because it's digital, it could just be, there's this threat of it could be wiped out, it could be brought to zero, or it could be turned off. Like I say, I guess there is that threat, and then how would you find out who had what? Do you know what I mean? Like now, there's still kind of everything is still, I know it's digital, but everything's still kind of recorded to an extent where we have some control over it. Like I say, you can kind of cash that money back out and turn it into real like tangible things you can hold.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think you're right. The vulnerability of our civilization at this point is at the highest, because digitalization is a very complex, open system for humans. So this is the difference between a nature which has created over evolution, which is that nature creates complex closed loop systems which are very resilient. Humans create complicated open loop systems, and the difference, and which are very vulnerable, and when they interact with the natural system, they open up the actual possibility for natural system to be weakened. And that's, you would know as an example of a software developer, if you have a closed loop network, LAN network, and everything is done within the server and hosted locally, there is no connection, and that is the internet connection for that system. Imagine a whole network which is based upon Earth, and that's it. Let's imagine there's civilizations on 9 planets, and all of them differs in different ways, and we have various different ways of doing it, and we think we are running experiment, and on Earth, the whole system of the networks and with the wires and the Wi-Fi are very closed and only are on Earth. So Earth is a big room, okay? Now, imagine that you then start to introduce things from Mars, some satellite connection maybe, Now you open up a door to a possibility which we don't know what kind of threat it would create. So in a way, you can explain that the human creates systems which are complicated, but they are very good at creating specialized machine, not aware of its implication and how it would scale. They're not scalable at a global level, and they are not aware of its consequences. So once you scale something, it doesn't work sustainably. And that's the problem with digitalization, which you are explaining. It's very complex. Sorry, it's very complicated. I'm just making a distinction between it could be, it is the same word, but I'm just using it complex for the nature because it has an emergent property, and I'm using complicated because it has various different layers, but it doesn't truly flow with each other in a very closed loop, sustainable system, which is self-propagating, if that makes sense.
Are you saying that? So, because of the times that we live in, it's a necessary progression, and because we haven't done it as such, you're saying maybe there's a lot of unknowns, and we're entering into like this unknown world of kind of a new digital currency.
Yes, I think there is this argument that there are certain elements of the things which we have to do it to figure out what we are doing wrong to then correct it. And I think that we are already at the step to know that the digitalization element of making everything digitalized is interesting and more efficient because you can fit more information into the bits.
Definitely more efficient, yeah.
But I think we haven't yet thought about at an existential level because it's very scary. I mean, solar flare
might wipe everything out.
Nearly. And it's so real.
Possible, I guess. Yeah, it's a real threat, yeah.
And it's very frequent. And now the data is coming in, and now the awareness is coming in. And that's why it's terrifying to look up. First of all, we can't look up because now we live in a bubbled cities of light pollution. So right now the problem with us is that we don't realize that we're just flying on a rock, which is beautiful spaceship around a burning star, and we pass through these crazy big massive objects so close that if you really understand the scale of it, it would terrify it. And there has been in the last known last 12 13 year nearly 50, 60 or 70 near misses of an asteroid. That's so strange. That's like we're just imagine, like, do you see in 12, so a year there are like 3 or 4 near misses, which is like, wow, okay. So the scale of understanding human civilization is actually beginning to grow, and the exponential growth has reduced that element. So we don't understand what it means to be on Earth, because the level of growth has been so quick that we said, oh, perfect, last 60 years, oh, brilliant. So we based all of our technology and the progression and the complications on that 60 rare years, or 100, you can say. And there has been no Yellowstone explosion, hopefully nowhere soon, but there has been no real impact. There has been no real solar flare. It's not just that we have a problem with the human element of it. We do, you're right. But we have actually a tangible, provable, external threat, which is to digitalization. If something happens, you are correct. The things will be wiped out. The power grid would go off. We actually wouldn't know who has what money. The food sources we have is just for a few months. After half a year, supplies are going to slowly run out. Crops are going to fail. And it's a problem. So we have to think about it. The reason we have to think about this digitalization problem is so that we don't run into it. And another element which happened is that as the system becomes very complicated, it becomes more vulnerable, because there's a balance between simplicity and complication. So you should have, and that's the problem which is happening with hyper specialized systems. The hyper specialized systems are brilliant, but the problem with the hyper specialized systems or teaching, you can see, our disciplines are so hyper specialized, is that no one has any longer an overview of what might be coming. And if you don't have that, then what happens is that what you want to do in your future is based on what hyper specialized silo you live in and whatever tool exists in that silo. So an example I use is, rather than a dog waggling a tail, the tail starts to wiggle the dog itself. And that's the thing which you are seeing. Our solutions are designed because of what tools exist. Not that we have a vision to walk towards a sustainable, robust future, hence use our tools to design the future, which is not products.
Okay, so what you're saying is we're not necessarily making money digital because it's necessarily convenient. You're saying it's just the natural progression of just the way things are. Because of the way we're doing things and everything else has gone digital, it just kind of naturally manifests itself in that form. I guess my next question to you would be then, do we think that this idea of money, currency, will always be around? I mean, like I say, because it's changed shape and form. It was once physical, and you and I believe that, obviously we can't put a date on it, but 5, 10, 100, 200 years from now, there may no longer be a physical currency, and it may just be all digital in form of either crypto on a blockchain, however that works, or whether it's in banks and just digital, and you spend it through your card. That we don't know. But yeah, that's my question to you.
So the first, I think, would be that, yes, I think it's more rather natural how the digital, so the currency has changed, rather than it being a natural thing. I think it's more an unforeseen consequence, which once being done, everyone tries to paint the target around an arrow.
I get you.
And that's the problem. And then they tell the story as if, the arrow was always supposed to hit the middle. It's not. It's just a random arrow. You're just painting a target around it. And we can talk about blockchain. Maybe if we come back to it at some point, there are certain elements of it which is not innovative in any way. And there are various elements of these things which has already been done before in different forms. And there is there's one element of it, which is that over-reliance over automated technologies. as if that's what's better than the human involvement, not realizing that the automated systems are still run by the humans and still controlled by the organizations, hence actually producing more disparity and issues. This has been done before as a Bible thing. I mean, that's what they did. They're like, okay, humans are crazy, let's write everything down. That's exactly what they did. They did blockchain.
Sure.
They
I guess it works in the same way.
Exactly. So they wrote everything down so that it could be reduced from humans' hands, so it cannot be manipulated. What did it do? It created more disparity, because still you cannot get rid of the priests and the popes and the Maulvis around that thing which is still being managed by the humans. So it doesn't really is something which you would magically bring into the human system and that would alleviate human. That's always has been the problem of people say, oh my God, the capitalism is evil. If you think that, well, yes, there's problems, my God. But here's the discussion. It's not about just the system. That's a very specific one-dimensional element of it. It's the interaction with the organism the system is working with. The system itself does not exist. The system on its own is just a dream taken or maybe run by a brain in a space. There's an example of a brain in a space, like what that would be. And it's just that vision, which does not have physical consequences of pain until you actually involve beings which have physical presence and actually have interactions and consciousness and attention. So the system is either evil or it's corrupt only when it's mixed with the organism. Other than that, yeah, you can have a debate around it. Now, what is the element now we're talking about? We're talking about like, oh my God, like what if humans and life form on Earth itself, whatever it is, or maybe even Earth's whole connection of all of our genome, what if that suffers because of a system? Well, then we have to understand what is the organism like. And if you think that the life is learning without the element of pain, or life is not very raw and brutal, and the capacity of evil exists, or brutality exist in organisms themselves, because they have to learn by actually doing that. And that's the evolution of an organism. They wouldn't know that that's what's evil or brutality looks like. And that's the depth of the issue. It's not just systems which kind of like hovers around it. These systems can come, evolve, being changed, and goes away. These systems exist mostly in our imaginative minds, and we make them the reality. Although they definitely, and this is a point very important, there are certain systems which are configured in a very wrong way to be acting as a mind virus, because we are very plastic. We can imitate. We are really adaptive, and that's the best part about humans. So yes, if a system comes, which is amazing, it could create amazing Buddhist millions of people who generally doesn't kill bugs. Or you can have child soldiers who can hack someone before they have hit teenaged. That's same thing. That's the same thing. So yes, there is something to be said about the system, but the issues are much deeper. So hence, connecting back to the digital system, is that this is a bit of a oversight, unfortunately, where we think that some system would come and make us something better without realizing the depth of our own capacities and what it means to be a human.
So I think from that, I've taken that you think these systems are, if not inherent, they're somewhat necessary through our natural progression, whether we've taken it on or it's taken us on. And that, so my question was, will currency be around all the time? So I guess through what you said, I think you do believe that currency will be for the long foreseeable future, some sort of currency system, if not obviously in today's form, but in the form of some sort of digital exchange. I think that's what essentially what you're saying, right? And I agree with that. I think for a long time it'll be around in the form of an exchangeable kind of thing that you know will allow you to. The reason I call it a thing is because right now there's, as you know, there's like multiple kind of digital cryptocurrencies. You know, it's not just Bitcoin, Ethereum. There's like 100 of them, if not 1,000 of them, if not 1,000,000 of them. So I wonder if in the future there will be different forms of currency in which you can only spend certain currency in certain places. So for example, right, I went into Tesco the other day. There's a Tesco somewhere in Central, right? And there's an Amazon across from it, an Amazon Fresh, and they work in the exact same way. So I had to download an app. Like I literally was about to step into this Tesco. This gentleman who worked there stopped me in a high vis, and he's like, "Oh, you know, you need the app. You need, you know, to be able to get in." I have a Tesco app, club card app, to collect points, right? I thought that's what he needed, so I opened it on my phone and tried to get in. He's like, "No, that's not the right app," and I'm like, "You know what? You've stopped me from coming into this Tesco. Like, I'm not bothered to now download this app. It's going to take me like, I don't know, 2 minutes. Like, all I wanted to do was like go in, have a water or a biscuit or something, grab one of those, you know." And basically, they made it like slightly difficult. But what I took away from that is, I think, like I said, there's going to be different currencies in different places. So you might have to have like a Tesco currency to be able to shop into Tesco, for example. I'm predicting it. I'm saying it right here. Don't forget this, you know, you and the people who might have listened to this. So I predict that different forms of currency will exist simultaneously that you can only spend in different places. So, for example, Tesco will have a currency and Amazon will have a currency and Apple will have maybe a currency and Bitcoin will maybe be some sort of currency that some people will accept. And this is what I think.
Yeah. So to the future of the currencies, I would say I have some intuitions around certain things. I would like certain things to happen.
Go on, tell me.
I think there are various possibilities for what would happen, but the simple answer is I don't know if they would or would exist or what would happen. Most of the time when people talk about future, I found very few people who are able to somehow tune into the correct or at least the most closest to the honest intuition and the raw real, which is beyond human reality towards it. But they even don't know at that time. And you figure out retrospectively that, oh my God, yeah, oh wow, that person was somehow. But so no one would know. Said that, to address the Tesco question, I did that too. I did went to Tesco Fresh. Amazon Fresh. And that's what they said to me. I think it's not, unfortunately, this is not their currency. So the problem is...
Not quite yet.
Yes. So the issue is that they don't care that much at this point for you to shop because they're not competing in the market of retail. What they're doing is that they're trying to collect your data. So once you have your app, they know everything about you. Means when you walked in, did you move left or right? Which color attracted you? How long did you stay? What did you buy? How long did it take you to buy that again? But you're still paying your own money. So it's what they're doing is that they're making you
a different form of currency. They're making you a form of currency in a way.
Well, that's
crazy.
Oh, but so this is Okay, so this is a big thing, which I think has been revealed many times in many documentaries.
But
Which
I never thought about it like that, as the form of currency.
So what has happened is that in this digital revolution, well, you know, when in the markets, when people used to sell you products, this is the future where our hedonistic drives, which has been predicted by Aldous Huxley, Brave New World, not really considered that serious, because I think it was at that time people seemed as unrealistic. He said, oh no, it's not like what George Orwell mentioned. And it could have happened. George Orwell mentioned something, everyone listened to it and avoided it. But he says, oh, not that the government would have screens at your place and would force you to be monitored. You would want to have the devices.
Yeah,
that's
what's happening.
Exactly. So now what has happened is that through all the data and what you want, what you are planning to give, it's no longer the products what they are selling you. They are actually giving you the items, which has turned you into the products.
I'm the product now.
You are being sold on the internet. That's what big data means. And that's what has happened over time. Everything you do, and that's what people do not realize, unfortunately, with the social media app and not owning their data and not understanding what happens when algorithms understands you better than you understand yourself, because you have not yet experienced what they able to extract, which has never been the case in the past from hundreds of thousands of people. There's no one who had that access. Now there is that power, computing power, and the data capture. And so who's the product? And here's the problem. So Amazon doesn't have a currency. It's just turning you into a product, so they feel like even a single customer in a shop buying something is a waste of data. So they would rather not have you come in than commit 10 people who would give you your data. Look at the model, the business model. It's way ahead. Very dangerous, of course, because it's, again, the market forces are monopolizing and colonizing everything, and it's like a self-terminative system which doesn't realize that it started to already eat its own tail. And the Tesco's are not even near. They don't even understand. There are 100 people go in there like, whatever, you can shop, and we don't care about your patrons that much. Amazon is like, not even a single person walks in. They're just extracting more from you and giving nothing, and you're still paying it. Unfortunately, it's not a currency. Now, you said that there will be different currencies. We do that all the time. We have different currencies in the same country. You have followers, is a different currency. You have positional power, it's a different currency than money. You have personal power, that's a different currency. Charisma, motivation, ability to bring meaning, ability to listen. Carers, a very different currency, not paid in cash. You would have people who are skilled in a way which can help you, not by actually, you're hiring their service in a traditional way, but the people who are around you who actually have technical knowledge of how society works can set up a thing. And now let's move to the next point, which could be called in some way a gift economy, which could work really well if the complications of what we have created, we can learn from the complexity of nature. It's a hard journey. It's very long. There's so much problems, of course. If we can have an AI which is based on our wise understanding of our best intuitions and have automated systems, so why would no one wants jobs. I mean, I'm sure there's a difference between work, which brings meaning and you add something to it or you express through it. But jobs are just 9 to 5 things, which just sometimes you do it and you don't even know what it is doing, and sometimes it is actually not doing anything. So yes, maybe there is an element of gift economy which would happen, and there would be some sort of a universal basing wealth, world basic, or it might start with nations, wealth generation, and enough resources and understanding of the population. One of the biggest issues is that the amount of wisdom we have does not cover the amount of power we have, and that power is being unleashed in the number of people who we don't care about. So it's not in our caring capacity. When people talk about, oh my God, no, population is fine, like Earth can carry a lot of people. Of course it can. It's not about, the conversation is not about whether Earth can carry enough people and if there are resources or not. That's a very important conversation. There is linear resources on planet Earth, and we have an exponential growth. That's what we predicted. Now, the person who predicted it, he couldn't see that most of the northern countries' growth would actually stop. Not only stop, some of them are in negative. Crazy. I mean, we thought that could never happen, but it is happening. But the problem is not just this. The problem is about that humans just don't have at this point enough carrying capacity for this number of people, with having so much power and no wisdom. If you have a power of gods, you should have you should have a wisdom of gods to actually match it. We don't have it. And hence that's the question. Can we do it? It's an open question. This really is an open question. We have no idea if we would pass this exam or not. And that is the great filter. That's a great filter. I've always been there with.
So you just made me come to another realization, and I'm about to make another prediction here. And I think this is going on from what you're saying. So there are different forms of currency existing right now, even in just where we are, just in London. So, for example, all the things you mentioned that are non-tangible, but specifically talking about money, we've got pounds, as in, the physical, the money in your hands and your pocket. Then there's the digital version of those pounds in the banks. Then there's the cryptocurrencies, which you can change it in. So even as we exist right now, there are multiple currencies that you and I can exchange in. And you was talking about, the different people of the world, and that made me realize the different levels of class and poverty and all over the world. And so you made me come to the realization that what will happen, and I think quite soon, not even the far future, I think in the very near future, I think physical money will get passed down to, I think, the lower class. I think the lower class in different economies across the world, I think will maybe use a physical currency. And I think the higher class will use this said digital, maybe even crypto, I don't know how it's going to work, will maybe trade in these currencies. That's a realization I just came up to now. Obviously, it's just a random prediction, but I think this is what will happen. That's what it sounds like.
Very interesting, yes.
Because think about, for example, what happened with the mobile phone revolution, right? We all now have iPhones and whatever, smartphones, like huge screens, and we can surf the internet and watch videos. But the poorer countries, they all have, they're moving up very quickly now as well. But I don't know if you've noticed, but like I say, this technology ends up, it's kind of drifts, like I say, towards the poorer countries and the lower class. And so I predict this with, I think, currency as well. I think this will happen.
So, yes. So, but what? Okay. I think that our attachment with humans are beings which are very attachable to things, and that's, once you are attachable, that's what drives things. See, we have hands, we are the changers, we move things, we manipulate things, and when you do that, you have this innate tendency to be attached to the material. And that's what happens sometimes, is that our tendency to the attachment to the material itself and the concepts, the ideology around that material, when it combines, it becomes potent. So now, I mean, that's what happens with the religions. You have a symbol and you have an attachment towards certain physical elements of whatever act you are doing. And it's fine. It's okay to attach yourself to positive things, but money is something which is an enabler for you to have a sort of generic exchange with someone you don't know. So it's a way of arranging society at a very large scale. But it's an enabler for you to do what you want to do. But the thing what happens is that we get attached with the tool, which is an enabler for what we were supposed to be doing. And we get obsessed with
this tool.
With the tool itself.
And that's only what it is. It's just a tool.
And the power of it comes from that
it's a tool that does everything.
Exactly. The symbol of it, the ideology. Everyone believes that the money can do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Hence it becomes powerful.
It's interesting how that's worked, right? So currency, obviously, if we look back, it would just be an exchange, right? Because you're talking about being able to exchange something with a stranger, you know? With your neighbor, you might have exchanged chickens for sheep and cows and whatever, or things that you've grown. And so what we've done is we've gone from that and we've, like you say, kind of scaled that upwards to be able to trade with anybody, anywhere, at any moment, any time. And so we've created money. And now with the whole digital revolution where you need to be able to do things instantly, you need to be able to pay somebody instantly, or you want something done instantly. Like you're saying, this new revolution has come about because it has to be instantaneous.
Yeah. I mean, yes, there was a barter system, and then there was a problem to evaluate all the things. And when you are exchanging larger amounts, it gets more and more complicated. So it's better to actually fix an amount and kind of value everything around it. And then you have somewhat relative easier time. But why do you think that the physical element of the currency would go to the poorer class and the digital thing would only remain?
So it's like I was saying about the mobile phone analogy, right? And it happens with everything. So I was born in the middle of Turkey, 1987, right? Came to this country in 1989. When I went back to Turkey for the first time in I think it was 94, 93. And it was literally like going back in time. Literally, like I went to, if you've ever seen the Flintstones, I went to the house of the Flintstones. One person in the entire village had a television. Water almost wasn't running. Electricity would always cut off. And here in the West, in London, we've had televisions and phones and electricity. Nothing cuts off. Everything works. And this is, like I say, early 90s, and everything was working perfectly, you know, like I say, no cut-offs. So when you go to a place like Turkey, which I don't think is a third world country, I think it might be a second, it might still be a first world country even, I don't know, but it's a developing country, and it was at the time more so. And so, like I say, you can make not predictions, but you can form these patterns and look, so this is how it was then in that country compared to here. And so, like I say, you can make a comparison. You can use, like what I was telling you earlier, the kind of rules of correspondence, you know, kind of the patterns of one thing and transfer it onto another to understand it. This is what I think. I came up with that prediction during this discussion here, and I don't know. I think that's what will happen.
So this is see, yes, there is a danger of this happening, and you're right, and that's why I told you about the digitalization, and that's the point which we were talking about, and the automation and these technologies that not having the wisdom, but actually have a condensed power, creates higher disparity between people. You're right, that could happen, and that's why we need to talk about these things, and that's the first thing we started. But I think there's one element which I think have to acknowledge here, is the obsession we have, certain people, especially certain type of humans, because humans are so diverse and so on spectrum that, yeah, I mean, they're so adaptive. Of course, they are at certain different spectrum, that we have this obsession with materialism, and we judge the developed or undeveloped world with the level of products, stuff, and what we unfortunately have started to think as technology is now limited to a thing which works on electricity. Technologies are not limited to a mic. Technologies are limited for your ability to be able to do certain rituals, understand sacred spaces, and be able to move through languages and cultures. That's a technology, but we don't see it. People still know that that's a technology. There are social, economic, emotional, and intuitive, collaborative technologies. There are technologies of creating certain set and setting which would change literally the way our brain is configured. Tell me which technology can do that, what we call technology. Not many. And if they do, mostly sometimes not even for our benefit, most of the times for the detriment. And it makes sense because they have to do it for you to be able to invest all your time and the money so that you can buy that. Now, you see, if we are talking about developing countries or developed, wouldn't you imagine that a developed country would be content? Well, that's what it looks like. I mean, if you're developed, you should be content. Or let's say, well, I would not like to call it happy, but let's say you have more joy, you're content, you're connected or fulfilled, whatever is the analogy of it. Maybe you're more grown up, or maybe you're more waken up, whatever the analogy is.
I think we're still yet to see what you're talking about. So this is what I understand from what you're saying. Right now, because things have gotten easier through automation, we don't necessarily need food as much. Like, we're not in the jungle, we're not starving. Food is readily available to us. And so currency becomes less of an issue because you have what you need to sustain yourself. And because of this, where are we going? What is the next fulfillment? Obviously, because we, like I say, there's no threat of finding that food. We don't need to hoard. We don't need to save up. Before we would have to save up our grain, because of the coming seasons, or we'd have to have a certain amount of livestock, because some of them might die, or we would trade them. And so you're saying, where are we going because of this? What happens in these situations? Is that what you're kind of asking?
So you made an analogy around developing and developed countries. Yeah. It's a hierarchy. I'm saying that the scale on which we are developing hierarchies, unfortunately, is very skewed because we consider technology of a very particular type based on a product which we can actually sell and maybe make you into this hyper-stimulant dependent relationship on it to be the developed country or not. If you compare that to maybe what could be considered as a developed country, is that, if you have all of these things, you should be more content. You should be maybe more connected to the being you are. That means that it's well-being. ultimately it's all about health of a system, an organism, and connection. Now, if that's not what a developed country is giving you, unfortunately, we have to understand that the scale is skewed. Now, you go back to a tribal place right now, they have nothing.
And they're content.
And they could be. I mean, I'm not saying that that's the way to do it. Just to be very clear, it's not an example that, oh my God, the Western society and the technology and the developing countries in Asia are somehow not
It's an interesting
right.
point you make.
Yeah, not right, and then then all the tribal societies are interesting. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that the scale is skewed. You can find both places, developed places which are truly like in that state, and they are fine, they found the balance. And there are tribal spaces who have actually find that balance, places in the villages, places in the jungle, places in the mountain, truly lives beautiful lives. But it's not the standard. Unfortunately, the standard of the developed and developing countries and the third world countries has been sold at a very fixed scale, which was a dream that it would bring us, as I said, blockchain, free us of all our human capacity of doing what we could. It hasn't happened.
It hasn't happened yet. I do think the way things are going, if we progress properly as humans, as a civilization, as a human species, I do think we will eventually get there, because I think it's the only possible. I mean, unless we destroy ourselves, I feel like it's the only natural form of progression. And I hate to bring the topic towards communism, but I think that's essentially what, maybe not communism or socialism in it as the words that they are now, but I think that's what you're trying to get at, because those tribal societies, they're much more sharing, or because they don't have, I mean, do they not have a currency?
They do have a currency.
They have their own currencies,
Yes.
right? And they have their own hierarchies.
Oh,
and
yeah.
so
But they are...
I guess what is important to them is different. And because they have hierarchies, I don't want to say that's a form of currency, but that kind of, it makes you, like I say, your perspective changes, things you want changes. And so because of the way we've grown up in society and what we've been led to believe is important, we just kind of accumulate that money because that's what works in this system and that's what works in their system.
I think the point, maybe important point, is that there are many ways of arranging societies, and we should have various different experiments going on and interacting with each other. The problem is when the dominant society colonizes everything else and absorbs it within, and then the systems become vulnerable. And that's what happened when the people have one type of crop, very vulnerable, one disease, everything gone. The immune system is vulnerable when it has one type of immunological responses. If it's diverse genetically, it's more immune and has better defended towards various different types of threats. It's just that the system is more robust if there are various different ways of arranging societies. Now, you're right, have to find the balance. And that's when I was saying that the first point in, when we started is, well, how do we arrange it? Like, how do we have a closed loop? I mean, this is what it looks like. And it needs, in my earlier proposal, I said we need automation. We need more intelligence, but that's the danger, what we were talking about, the disparity which it would create. But yes, but here's the thing. I don't think it's obvious. I think it's, as much as I'm involved in this, as much as I'm thinking about it, as much as I'm trying to maybe just collect, skate everything and try to move from one place to another as wide as I can, it really is a chance. I mean, you said, if we don't destroy ourselves, and it's a very likely possibility. It's an equal weight of a possibility. So it is a very open game. And that's why it's good. I mean, why would you want to live? Someone wants to find meaning in their life. Here's the meaning in your life. truly you are responsible for your actions to make a human species into what it would be by living your life. This is the answer you provide to the evolution of a species, by living your life. And if you think that survival of a whole species and maybe even other species connected to us is not worth living and a higher enough challenge, what then? And that's what life means. In that sense, if you want to have meaning, that's one way of doing it. And of course, the challenge of maybe creating some elements and art or other things of how people would see the challenge, what I described it, of one's own survival. And then one of the worst thing, of course, could be that we do create a system which actually doesn't terminate us, or somehow we walk into a space which creates a system which is not truly self-terminating but self-suffocating, which means that you create the highest amount of suffering and still keep the system alive, or organism alive, or a species alive. That would be an unfortunate situation. If there's a model which you want to avoid, you be like, what is the unlikely place which which is the most horrible, or a place filled with suffering I don't want to be at? That's the place which you should avoid. So if you're looking for the first, most simplest guidance, we can start here. And I really believe that it's a very open game, and it's a difficult challenge. It's the only time where I would truly from my heart reach out through my intuitions, like a space inside of my body from capital B, the thing which is connected, like our genes are connected, the connection and the infusion and the oneness of all of life on earth itself. What that is, we yet have to discover. So truly at that level, at that presence, and that what people talk about through your attention exercise, you can have certain elements of vast awareness of what all of us share. Everything shares, like the life itself. I think that might be the only point at that level I would ask honestly and humbly for the guidance, because that challenge, I think, is very grave.
So you believe we have a huge challenge ahead of us when it comes to kind of deciding where or how we want to kind of progress economically, right?
Yeah. Economically.
Do you know why it's difficult?
Socially.
It's because
as a human.
Because money is this just made up concept in which it has its value, and it's the only thing that has really and truly that value. Everything else can fluctuate, right? You can get a bottle of water, 50 pence, pound, £2, 500 ml or whatever. Like, it fluctuates, right? Depending on where you get it from, which brand. And so nothing really actually has a value. It's only what you value at that moment. Like, if you're not thirsty, you don't need the water. You're not willing to pay the money for it. But if you haven't had water in 2 days, you'd gladly give everything you've got for it. So nothing essentially has a value except money. And that's the value we've assigned. Like, £10 is always £10. Even, forget inflation, like 10 years later, even with inflation, £10 is still £10, right? And it's always that same value. And that's why it's really weird. It's really confusing. People don't know what to do with that.
Yeah, but also there's now, unfortunately, with big data, as I told you, the difference has been that no, you're not being sold the products. You, unfortunately, are being manipulated. I'm
glad you bring that back up again, because I was laughing earlier. Because I'm like, you know what? Can I sell my own data, and what am I worth,
You can. That's what people are working towards. Actually, the lawyers and a lot of activists are working that you own your data and you should have data dashboards and you being If your data is being used, you should be paid because it's worth something. Now, that's a good solution. Let's see where it goes. And it's a legalization issue, legislation issue. But what I wanted to mention is that no longer now the demand and the supply works as it was proposed probably by Adam Smith, the father of modern economics. What he said is very different. I mean, how he mentioned things around, businesses was very different, was much more local, and to he's used example of shoemakers. I mean, we I think it's a very different segue. I mean, I think just let's say quickly, you create a shoemaking business, and if you invest into the capital and create the business bigger, it would actually be better because you're making better shoes. You're actually employing your neighbors, their economic situation is getting better, and what people need, they are getting it in a better quality, including more people. He never realized what if you, well, that's the thing. He didn't, no, I don't know if he realized or not, so I don't know about that. But I think his model is actually really benign compared to what we have now. And what if this shoemaker who's the owner says that, you know what, I'm going to make more shoes, but I'm going to pay less because they were there, because the person is greedy. Again, the human element. Not only the pay less, I would actually put more money into getting other businesses out. So now the product no longer is the best thing. It's just the only thing which you can buy. Not only that, what if I somehow have the big data technology and I create, and that's what's happening with the stock market, unfortunately. So the stock markets are no longer now being only manipulated by the financial movement of the money, which was kind of okay. At least they were doing their work and, financial bankers. But now you have big data. You actually create the vision and the actual desire for an idea before the product exists. So you are no longer want something. You are told to have something because many times certain things are understood better. And that's how the stock market, unfortunately, is working. Now, imagine investing everything you have. Let's take a shoemaker example. Let's expand it. Let's say there's a stock market. Let's say that people are investing in the companies. Let's say there are many other type of people who are making similar things. Now, what if this person invests everything in creating shoes out of leaves? So what you do is that you strip all the leaves, and what happens is that if you strip all the green leaves, it would allow you to have better leaves on the trees, and those shoes are more connected to the nature. And that you can only do it if you have the ability to understand what would convince people of that. No one needs those shoes. It doesn't work. It actually is destroying the tree. But everyone would buy that product before it even is there. And this person have already invested everything into this thing, which doesn't even exist, because it's no longer about manipulation. It's actually creating the demand of something which is not only detrimental for the person, they don't even need it, and it's actually impacting negatively to their environment. And then the person buys it, and who would benefit? Undoubtedly, of course, that investment worked. So it's no longer the investment like the stock is that, oh yeah, this product works better, so, move money to there, and and I'll take a little cut, but too much of it. That was the corruption. That's not the time, man, anymore.
Do you think money is a product of greed? Do you think we created currency and money in the form that it is today, both physical and digital, because we are essentially greedy, and that this helps kind of fulfill our greed somewhat?
I think it's a deeper problem like anything else. I think it is more to do with what we were talking about before, is that our nature has, in a way, helped us to be very attached to tools. And that's what made our fingers. You know, we design our tools and the tools designs us back, Marshall McLuhan. That also has created this element of our obsession with the material, no matter what it is. It's just the money is just one element of it. It's all of the materials, and that's what we talked about, the skewed scale which we have about what is developed and what is developing. I think a brilliant concept here, I hope that I can articulate it, which is useful. Dukkha is a concept in Buddhism. So when people say that Buddha said that life is suffering, it's not that. First of all, that's not even the line. It says life has suffering, not life is
I always
suffering.
knew it as life is suffering. Okay, wicked.
Not only that, it's not suffering. The word is not suffering. It's dukkha, which doesn't have an actual translation in English as such. So it's easier to just say this. What it means is that life has a little misalignment. You know, as a human, you're never always in the present. It makes sense because you are an imaginative, subjective being and made out of this consciousness who's kind of aware of the nature, but also truly part of it, but not like other animals. It's very different. You're like sometimes a little bit further into the life, or sometimes back into your, which I call fantasy and fear. You're somewhere like roaming around. So it makes sense. It gives you brilliant power because, you know, one of the things which could happen, which we say, I mean, it's a possibility that the self-reflective subjective loops can create self-awareness. And that could be a possibility. And in imitation gives us the raw materials. I can go further into it, that how imitation itself, you know, how our genes are selected for memetics. And so we have this imitation. So it's like, what is the best thing you can do? Is that if I can copy everyone's superpower, that's the best superpower. That's exactly why we are here, why I'm talking to you on a microphone. That's exactly what evolution did, why humans are where they are, because they can imitate anything they see. And so that's how they adapt better, which allows their brain to be really plastic, which means that the capacity to have symbols and words and languages is wrapped onto the layer after layer after layer after layer after layer, and hence creating a subjectivity, self-reflective loop, subjective loop can create an awareness, self-awareness. Now, what it does is that it actually is like a concentrated matter of reality perception, which means that it's like a black hole. It's like it's folding over its own self, one layer after another. It's a dense, subjective observation of what a reality feels like to itself. What can an eye see itself? It's a very hard question. And I guess that's what it means when you say dukkha, because it gives you so much power. The you know how the space is curved around black holes and dense places?
Apparently, yeah.
And that's why you have so much capacity to store your past, plan for further future. But that also have a price, huge price. If you do get stuck in the past and get stretched out into your future, you would be annihilated by the present, which is here, and it is bumping into you with everything. And what you have in your fantasy and fear does not unfortunately exist. It does inform you of what could happen and might be happening. Now that's where the word comes, dukkha. There's a little misalignment to it. So you can imagine that we have a little lens. So we are not directly connected to the raw stimuli and the connection. And that's why our brain creates our reality rather than translates it. And that's a lot of research being done on this now, on computational neuroscience, philosophy, consciousness studies, neuroscience, where most of it is, we are realizing that Anil Seth's work is brilliant on it. Even David Deutsch's work is fantastic. Antonio Damasio's work, he is an evolutionary biologist, is brilliant on it. That the brain is not a reality translator. That's what we thought. Brain is a reality creator. It predicts a reality. And if it doesn't match, that's why you suffer, because it's like it wants the reality to match. It's what it's saying. Now, coming back to the example, I put a little, just grounded into the literature. But so, and then let's get back to the tradition and Buddha. There's a lens. Let's say there's a lens. You look through a lens. What lens does that it allows you to manipulate the perception of what the data is. That manipulation allows you to see things in different ways. But what it does is that it also distorts what's there. And that distortion creates what Native American people have said, certain cultures have said about themselves or the people, that humans have a hole in their souls, hearts, body, which is bottomless and can never be filled by any amount of material. Hence the saying of, when you ask someone why you're being a high achiever, what does that mean? What are you trying to achieve? What does it even mean to be a high achiever? What they're trying to achieve is peace. And they're trying to achieve something which exists internal subjectively through external remedy. And that would never be fulfilled by our obsession with the materialism. So hence, connecting back to our nature of being attached, but understanding that we are the being who are a little misaligned, which is our power of being somehow like a God vision compared to other species. Understanding that certain connection and misalignment cannot be filled by our obsession with no matter how much technology we have. It is about what could you do to create the attention level, create attention practices to be able to see the present, to be able to see what is it that creates that obsession towards this materialistic urge, because you do want to fix it, It can only be fixed internally. It could only be fixed through understanding that dark hole. Where does it lurk? How can I create more space within me as a human to be able to truly feel it and be able to hold it and see it dissipate? How do I correct that, the lens I talked about? How do you sometimes correct it? Because you do need the correction. You can't always be distorted. You can't always be just thinking about the past or planning about the future, because you have to be connected to the raw intuitions of what you are, part of the earth, which is a part of the solar system, which is a part of the our galaxy and the universe. And that raw data, once you're connected to that, also gives you freedom to let go of the structures, the predictive models which your brain has created of what reality is. Hence, I think that the money is a very small problem of what it means to be a human.
Okay, yeah, I agree with you. So you're saying money isn't the problem, it's human nature. But through human nature, we've somehow created this thing called money and currency. Inevitably, is what you're saying, right? Through our nature, or through the nature of currency. Maybe currency has created us. Is that what you're saying? And through this, you're saying this has become a problem, and in the future, this will be maybe a bigger problem because we're moving further and further away from what it means to be human, be natural, maybe live more tribalistically, more communistically. But I also get what you're saying about the opportunities of growth through this medium, right?
Yeah. I mean, money is, as I said, one speck of a problem of 1,000 sand particles, million sand particles around one small beach. The problems are vast, and that's just one element of it. It does, you're right, it does connect a lot of things. Hence, in that aspect, it is very important to understand, but still just one speck of a problem. I actually have, you remember you were saying, so how? I mean, what do we do? Where do we lead? I mean, is there an opportunity for growth? I remember once mentioned that what if, and please explain it, and I'm going to just say it briefly, that if we have in all of our boards, the advertisement boards.
Oh, yes.
You remember, like, all the notice board, advertisement boards, if we have things like that.
This is an idea I preach all the time.
So please explain that.
So I have this idea, this idealistic vision of the future in which the notice boards, advertising boards that we have currently, be it at bus stops, on the walls, everywhere, instead of being, just dumb, mindless advertising for silly products that you actually don't need and probably are far more expensive than they need to be. Imagine a world where there's these advertising boards, but they have information and usable information, smart information. Maybe, for example, this is just a really basic example, but if you had the 10 by 10 grid, the maths times tables just everywhere, then through seeing it over years and years, wouldn't you just naturally be just really good at math? Like, you wouldn't even be working it out at that point. You would just know what every equation just is. So imagine, like I say, all this mathematical information. I mean, some of it seems irrelevant now, but if we had all this information just readily available, constantly always there, then imagine how far we would be. Like, everyone would just be good at, for example, math. And then if you had other information, I don't know, science, English, or whatever language, imagine like other languages. Imagine like entire stories were written on walls in multiple languages. And like I say, again, over time, if you see this again and again and again, you would pick this up and it becomes subconscious. You'd probably learn entire languages just so easily. Do you see what I'm saying? Without any effort. And so, I have this idealistic vision of the future, but it could happen tomorrow, but it would mean kind of putting away money. I think that's why you bring it up. We'd have to completely eradicate this concept of money and kind of re-understand what we value, revisit what we value,
Yes.
and
So
want a better future.
such a
to evolve.
beautiful, such a beautiful string you have just plucked from this fantastic future vision which you have. I think it somehow brings home what we were talking about, is that to do that, we have to truly transform and rearrange our society. If we do that, we are already different people than we are right now, and it's a long path to something like this,
Unfortunately.
Even just to be a society which becomes a completely reused and recycle material economy, only doing that makes us completely different than what we are. But I think we can see the echoes of what you just said in other ancient civilizations. And that's what I was mentioning, that to be able to understand how we might arrange our future civilization is very important that we understand the wisdom and the knowledge which has been accumulated, and so we can translate it, because you can't just apply wisdom is very situation driven. You cannot learn wisdom. You can understand what happened, and you have to be wise for your times. Now you can see that in Egypt. Well, that's what the pyramids were. Pyramids were this material which they beautifully constructed with these gold platings and the marbles, which has all of this mathematical or symbolic or mythical kind of space oriented information. Everything is aligned with the stars. I mean, that's what they did already. But that's why we don't even understand what type of civilization that was, because it is so far away from what we think is a way to arrange a civilization. And I do want to create, this project. I have this vision of creating like this problem solving team of a multidisciplinary, creating some task, some problem solving task, which, binds brilliant minds together, because that's what we love now. And hopefully that would allow us to study, look back all the previous meaningful, useful, truly valuable things which are there in our past, which are not given enough importance. And we focus on various different elements. So I have this problem solving idea of creating certain preservation task. I'm not going to go into it. I'm just detailing it, like a preservation task, so we can preserve certain elements for our future selves. So 10,000 years later, we don't understand anything just 4, 5, 6, 7,000 years ago how things were done. And these were the people who were brilliant. And they actually did things on stone. And the weirdest part is, and that just blows my mind always, if something happens to our civilization and thousands of years later, finally humans emerge, one of the only things which will still be there are pyramids. So they wouldn't even know that anything existed, because electronics, which we are talking about, the vulnerability of it would just get completely grounded to dust, that you won't find anything. And it wouldn't be weird that they would be studying pyramids, not even realizing that there was a whole millennia of advancements and complexity which ever existed. So if those people who are more insightful in creating certain things, maybe, we don't know that if that's the case. It's just a speculation. But if they were thinking about passing on this message and they had billboards, what you're talking about, of such information. I mean, they must be doing art at a level of civilization. I mean, they must think about what is valuable in such a radical way that it's getting impossible for us to understand what is it they were doing. Like, what is the meaning of it? We kind of like a little bit understand certain things. If we cannot understand that, even though they were so good, imagine we are doing nothing to leave certain elements where future humanity would be able to, if gets destroyed, built upon their older knowledge. What if, so there's this project I want to work on. And hopefully the goal is not to actually solve the problem, but the goal is to bring all the brilliant minds together, like historians and cryptographers and astrophysicians and mathematicians and storytellers and filmmakers, and bring that concentration and attention of this brilliance towards this valuable resource of our ancient civilization, which exists but has not been given enough attention. And that allows you to be more connected to different ways of creating and arranging civilization, allows us better chances of then people going further into the society, knowing that there are completely different ways of living. And hence, maybe, what you just mentioned, what we are talking about forever, maybe we might get at some point where we see a sunlight, which allows us to be what we are discussing. I mean, we don't even know what that is, so we just have to, talk in this way.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we need to have these discussions, and like you say, maybe bring multiple brilliant minds together. Not necessarily, like you say, to solve a problem, but at least to assess what is happening, and whatever it is that's happening, can we do this more efficiently? Can we do this better? Whatever that means. And if so, let's do it.
Mm-hmm. So let's end on this last thought, which I wanted to, provoke. We're talking about human evolution. We're talking about maybe transcending of what it means to be human. You might have heard this word recently used. If not, let me know. Techno Sapiens.
I got it in the email you sent me. First time I'm hearing it. What do I think about that? What's my take on that? Techno Sapiens, techno meaning technology, futuristic, coming, and sapien, obviously the currently what we are, right? Homo sapiens, right? So Techno Sapiens. So you're saying that we're evolving from Homo sapiens into this new thing.
So yes, you I think you perfectly said what this word represents. Although I do have a little incursion of some sort in this type of thinking. So this word does exist, not techno-sapien, but the word techno-mystics.
Okay.
Or techno-spiritualists. This is something which was in my mind since forever. And we talked about so much about human adaptability and humans' ability to imitate things. And I think many people are describing this as now, okay, so we have now a very specific type of technology. Mm-hmm. Again, we are relying, I think, way too much on circuits and the type of technology we have. That's what happened when there was a steam revolution, that everything was corks, and the brain was described. The analogies get hacked by the dominant technology which exists. And what people are saying that techno-sapien is that, oh yes, our evolution is that we are becoming techno-sapien. I think what I would like to add is that humans have lived on various different spaces. So people who now live on mountains, Sherpas who have different lung capacity, people who live in jungle, Amazon, they talk to trees, and they actually can be very connected like shamans to understanding certain elements of just even physically creating various different brews. People who are living in cold environments adapt completely differently. Their skin adapt differently. People who live in certain ideologies become the product of that ideology, like a child soldier in Africa. We talked about Buddhists. I think we are looking, when we say, oh, we are evolving into Techno Sapien, at a very brief moment of what humanity is and what this specific type of technology is making us do. So now I would like to introduce the word which has been used before, and I think that is more resilient and more close to what the honest representation might be. So if you live with the type of technology, and I mean technology, electronics, electricity, that's what I'm talking about. I think, yes, there are individuals I just described, growing up with electricity, and they are more in tune with it. And I would describe that word as they are in communion with this complexity, neither completely mesmerized by it or nor scared of it. And I think that's one element of it. When people said, oh, we are now evolving with the technology and we are now techno-sapien, well, that's what it means to be a human. I think we are missing the evolutionary element of what it truly means to be a human. It's not techno-sapien. Humans, there are 5 different types of humans. Humans are so adaptive that they truly, sometimes you wonder, if you do research, you might find the spectrum so far apart that compared to other species, you would be like, oh, they're not even same species. That's why it's...
I was just thinking that as you was telling me about like the different, adaptations, I was thinking, you know what, you're right. Like, we adapt so quickly. It's unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's why I say I think there's a little misrepresentation. There's lack of understanding of the literature itself, and there's an association which people want to call themselves. Oh, I'm not anymore Homo sapien. I'm a Techno Sapien.
I think the generation after me, you could definitely say 100% Techno Sapien. Me, I'm still, a little bit old school. There's certain technologies I don't know how to use,
But that's what I want to actually clarify, is that this is the word, what the core of always what humans have been. What is Neanderthals, Denisovians, Homo sapiens, Homo erectus. They are different type of humans. There were 5 different type of humans. Just the word human, like what kind of organisms we are, it is the base of why we have spread everywhere, is the imitation ability. And whoever you live with, the term, has to have a context which describe a true transformation. It doesn't just rebrand what there is already. Hence, I think we have to be very careful in understanding that when there is an evolution going on, and when there is a communion going on with another form of being or an energy source, electricity is part of Earth. It's like any other thing. It's evolving with various different elements, and there's a communion going on. And yes, you can describe it as techno-mystic because it's just calling humans evolving or imitating or adapting to what they are living with. But you again have to come back to the sustainability element of it. If you are mesmerized by it, you are led by it. If you think you are dependent on it, you have a hyperstimulative relationship, which might drive you to the places which your intuitions are not describing. If you are scared by it, you would not be able to explore it. Hence, when I said the people who are not mesmerized or scared of it, but in communion with it to be able to go forward, what I'm trying to say is that the word Techno Sapien just means human. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean that, oh, now they are different.
No,
well,
of
that
course,
is
yeah.
what
Because
humans...
you put them in a different situation and then they'll adapt to that.
And that's what it means to be a human. Anyway, that's the... I thought it would be a good question. I think it would be a good provocative question to just think about.
Yeah.
What is our story? Where we want to go? Can we evolve?
Can we evolve?
And
That's a good
thank you
question.
so much, man, to
Thank you.
be here. Yeah, to be able to have this dialogue.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Perfect.
I really do appreciate it.
Same here. Loads of love to everyone who's listening. And goodbye.